Imagine two children sitting beside a fire 100,000 years ago. One is older, strong, and already learning how to track animals. The other is younger, smaller, and coughing from an illness nobody can name. Their parent returns to camp carrying one piece of meat. It isn't enough to satisfy both children, so who gets the larger share? The younger child, because that child needs it more? The older child, because that child has the better chance of surviving? Or do they divide it evenly and risk leaving both children hungry? For us, that sounds like an impossible moral test. For an early human family, it could simply have been dinner. Today, most parents insist they don't have a favorite child. They may treat their children differently, but they'll tell you the love is equal. However, equality is much easier when there's food in the refrigerator, medicine in the cabinet, and another paycheck coming next week. Early humans had none of those guarantees. Every bite of food, every hour of protection, and every dangerous lesson represented a limited investment. Giving more to one child could mean giving less to another. So did early human parents secretly choose favorites? And if they did, when did that behavior begin? The surprising answer is that the roots of favoritism may be far older than humanity itself. But before accusing a prehistoric parent of loving one child more, we need to understand what the evidence can, and absolutely cannot, tell us. Chapter 1. The question. Bones can't answer. There is a major problem with this question. Feelings don't fossilize. Archaeologists can uncover a child's bones, examine their teeth, estimate their age, and sometimes reconstruct parts of their diet. They can identify injuries, periods of poor growth, and occasionally the genetic relationships between people buried near one another. But no skeleton comes with a label saying, "Mom liked this one best." Even a carefully prepared grave cannot prove that a child was favored while alive. It may reveal grief, ritual, status, family identity, or respect for the dead. It cannot expose a parent's private ranking of their children. So for this investigation, favorite needs a more useful definition. Instead of asking which child received the most love, we'll ask which child received more investment. Who received the larger portion of food? Who was carried when the group moved? Who was protected from danger? Who was patiently taught a difficult skill? Who was allowed to rest while another child worked? Those choices could affect survival, even if the parent loved every child deeply. And unequal treatment isn't automatically favoritism. A sick child may receive more food because they're sick. An older child may receive more freedom because they're capable of handling it. Equal care and identical care are not the same thing. That distinction will become extremely important, because the child getting more might not have been the favorite. They might simply have been the child whose need was impossible to ignore. Chapter 2. Why a human child cost so much. Human children are unusually expensive. Not expensive in dollars, obviously. Expensive in calories, time, protection, and teaching. Many young animals become mobile quickly. Human babies arrive helpless, grow slowly, and remain dependent for years. That long childhood gives the brain time to learn language, tools, social rules, plants, animals, weather, and the behavior of other people. But it also creates a serious survival problem. A child can eat for years before producing enough food to replace what the group invests in them. Research among living foraging societies shows that children's work and learning vary enormously by environment. Simple resources can be gathered relatively young. Complex hunting and foraging skills may take many years to master. That means early human parents weren't just feeding a smaller adult, they were funding a long and uncertain apprenticeship. Now add another child. And another. One may still be nursing while an older sibling remains unable to feed themselves consistently. The parent's body has limits. The day has limits. The group's food has limits. This doesn't mean prehistoric families spent every evening fighting over one scrap of meat. Hunter-gatherers commonly share food, and cooperation can reduce the damage caused by one person's bad luck. But sharing doesn't make resources infinite. During illness, drought, injury, migration, or a failed hunt, hard choices return. Carry the toddler or help the injured older child. Teach the patient learner or spend extra time with the child falling behind. Give the richest food to the smallest body, or to the teenager expected to walk all day tomorrow. There was no universal answer. The correct choice could change with the season, the child, and the number of helpers nearby. In other words, Early parenting wasn't one decision about a favorite. It was thousands of tiny decisions about where limited effort would do the most good. Chapter 3. The Ancient Math of Attention. In 1974, evolutionary biologist Robert Trivers gave scientists a powerful way to describe this conflict. He called it parent-offspring conflict. The basic idea is surprisingly simple. A biological parent is equally related to each of their children. From the parent's evolutionary perspective, investing everything in one child can reduce what remains for that child's siblings, or for future children, but each child experiences the calculation differently. That child is completely invested in their own survival. Their sibling matters, but not as much as they matter to themselves, so the child is pushed to demand a little more care than the parent can afford to give indefinitely. More milk, more food, more carrying, more protection, more time before being expected to become independent. This is not a conscious equation running inside anyone's head. The child isn't calculating genetic percentages beside the fire. The parent isn't operating a prehistoric spreadsheet. Natural selection can shape emotions and behavior without anyone understanding the math beneath them. Hunger feels urgent. A cry is difficult to ignore. Jealousy makes a sibling's extra portion feel personally threatening. Parental exhaustion creates pressure to say no, and this is why the title's question has a strange answer. If favoritism means unequal investment, its biological roots didn't suddenly appear in a Homo sapiens family. Competition over parental care exists throughout the animal world. It was already ancient before anything recognizably human walked the planet. Humans didn't invent the conflict. What humans added was an unusually long childhood, extraordinary learning, and a social network complicated enough to negotiate that conflict in new ways. Chapter 4. Children were not passive. It's easy to picture early human children waiting quietly while adults decided their fate. Real children almost certainly made that impossible. Children don't merely receive care. They compete for it, signal for it, and learn how to keep it. A baby's cry can pull an adult's attention away from everything else. A frightened child stays close to the person most likely to protect them. An older child may become useful, collecting food, watching a younger sibling, remembering a water source, or learning a difficult tool. Temperament matters too. One child may be easy to teach. Another may be impulsive, demanding, or constantly wandering toward danger. That difference can change how adults respond without proving that one child is loved more. Now place siblings beside each other. Each one can see who gets carried. Each one can notice who receives the better piece of food. Each one can recognize who is praised, protected, or trusted. The argument in the back seat of a modern car, "Why does she always get to sit there?" has much older emotional machinery beneath it. The ancient version just had higher stakes. One sibling's advantage might mean less comfort for the other, but competition was only half the story. The same older child who demanded a larger share could later protect a younger sibling. The same siblings who fought over food could become allies while gathering, learning, or facing danger. Sibling rivalry and sibling cooperation weren't opposites. They were two strategies operating inside the same family, and that creates a major twist. The child who received more investment today might become the child who helped support everyone tomorrow. Chapter 5. Who looked like the better bet? So which child would receive more? The honest answer is, it depends. Imagine the youngest child is weak, but likely to recover with a little extra food. Investing more in that child may protect the family's most vulnerable member. Now imagine the illness is severe, the food shortage is extreme, and an older child is healthy enough to contribute. The same family could make the opposite decision. Need matters, age matters, health matters, skill matters. The parent's condition matters, the environment matters. Even birth order doesn't create one simple rule. Firstborn children receive a period when they have no sibling competition, but they also arrive when a parent has the least experience. Later-born children must share attention, yet they may benefit from more experienced adults and helpful older siblings. Research on wild chimpanzees illustrates how misleading a simple favorite label can be. First-time mothers in one long-term study nursed, groomed, and played with their firstborn infants more than experienced mothers did with later-born infants. That sounds like favoritism toward the firstborn, but the extra care appeared compensatory. First-time mothers were inexperienced, and the greater investment helped give firstborn infants a similar survival chance. More care did not necessarily mean more affection. It may have meant more risk. Humans add culture to this equation. Different societies value different skills, roles, personalities, and family relationships. A strong hunter might be highly valued in one environment. A careful plant expert, patient caregiver, gifted craftsperson, or socially connected child might matter more somewhere else. That is why we should be suspicious of any claim that early humans always favored sons, daughters, firstborns, or physically strongest children. Human societies are too varied, and ancient evidence is too incomplete for a universal rule. What looked like the better bet changed with the world around the family. Chapter 6. The village changed the equation. So far, we've imagined one parent dividing care between children. That picture is far too modern. Early human children were often surrounded by a wider network of potential caregivers. Fathers, grandparents, aunts, uncles, older siblings, other juveniles, and unrelated campmates could all contribute protection, food, teaching, or supervision. Anthropologists call care from someone other than the mother allomothering. Studies of present-day hunter-gatherer communities do not give us a perfect window into the Stone Age. These communities are modern people with their own histories. But carefully used, their behavior helps researchers test what flexible human childcare can look like without schools, daycare centers, or isolated nuclear households. Recent research among Agta and Bayaka hunter-gatherers found that young children's close social networks included both relatives and non-relatives. Siblings, other young people, and unrelated campmates could all be substantially involved. The exact contribution of fathers and grandmothers varied between the populations. That variation matters. There was never one standard prehistoric family. And once several people provide care, the meaning of favoritism becomes harder to identify. A mother may have less time for one child, while an older sibling gives that child constant attention. A father may teach one child to track, while another adult teaches the second child how to process plants. A child who seems disadvantaged in one relationship may be strongly supported by the wider camp. The group can also soften a parent's impossible choice. If one adult has little food, another may share. If a parent is sick, someone else may carry the baby. If siblings are competing, cousins and playmates can create other paths to learning and belonging. Humans may have survived not by eliminating unequal treatment, but by distributing childhood across many relationships. The village didn't make every child equal. It made one parent's limits less final. Chapter 7. The Children. Archaeology remembered. Now we return to the bones. Around 78,000 years ago, a small child was deliberately buried at Pangayasaidi in what is now Kenya. Researchers nicknamed the child Mtoto, meaning child in Swahili. The child was roughly 2.5 to 3 years old. Evidence from the grave indicates that a pit was intentionally dug and the small body was placed in a flexed position. The careful burial gives us a powerful glimpse of how deeply a young death affected an early Homo sapiens community. Thousands of years later at Sungir, in what is now Russia, 2 children were buried with extraordinary grave goods, including thousands of ivory beads and long ivory spears. It is tempting to look at an elaborate child burial and announce, "There is the favorite." But that conclusion would go far beyond the evidence. Grave goods may represent ritual, inherited status, group identity, the circumstances of death, or beliefs we no longer understand. The people who prepared the burial may not even have been only the parents, and a child buried without valuable objects may have been loved just as fiercely. Archaeology preserves unusual moments better than ordinary affection. It can reveal a grave. It rarely preserves the thousands of meals, lessons, comforting touches, and small sacrifices that made up a childhood. The most honest conclusion is both frustrating and important. We have evidence that ancient communities invested meaning in children. We do not have a fossilized ranking of which child was loved most. Chapter 8. The favorite could keep changing. The phrase favorite child makes us imagine a permanent winner. Early human investment was probably far more flexible. The baby may receive the most physical care. The sick child may receive the most food. The skilled child may receive the most advanced teaching. The cautious child may be trusted with more freedom. The impulsive child may receive the most supervision. Every one of those children could appear favored depending on what we measure. And the pattern could reverse after an injury, a birth, a death, a move, or a change in the food supply. Even an older sibling becoming productive could transform the family. That child no longer only consumes resources. They may gather food, carry materials, teach younger children, or protect them. An investment that looked unequal at age 5 might support several siblings by age 15. This is another reason evolution does not create a simple, always choose the strongest rule. Parents live with uncertainty. The quiet child may become the best tracker. The weak child may recover. The bold child may take one risk too many. Spreading care can be a form of insurance when nobody knows which child's strengths the future will require. The favorite may not have been one child. It may have been whichever child presented the most urgent combination of need, promise, and opportunity in that moment. Chapter 9. The cave still inside the house. Many modern families no longer face the same daily constraints that shaped Stone Age childhood. But attention is still limited. There may be enough cereal for everyone, yet there are never enough hours in the day. One child needs help with homework. Another has a medical appointment. One shares a parent's interests. Another is easier to talk to. One follows every rule. Another seems to generate a new emergency before breakfast. Modern research usually calls the resulting pattern parental differential treatment. That term is less dramatic than favorite child, but it is more precise. A 2025 meta-analysis combined data representing more than 19,000 participants. It found small but meaningful patterns. Older siblings tended to receive more favored treatment in autonomy and control. Parents reported favoring daughters, and children described as more conscientious or agreeable also tended to receive more favorable treatment. But these were averages, not rules for every family. Different children may also be favored in different areas. One gets more freedom. Another receives more emotional closeness. Another receives more practical help. The modern danger may not be difference itself. It may be unexplained difference that hardens into identity. The responsible child becomes the good one. The struggling child becomes the problem. Once those labels form, parents may notice behavior that confirms them and overlook behavior that does not. Children notice too. A study of 708 adult children from 274 families found that perceived maternal favoritism was associated with less closeness between siblings. Memories of favoritism during childhood were especially important in predicting tension later in life. The competition can survive long after the food shortage is gone. This is where the modern family has an advantage early humans may not always have had. We can pause. We can explain why one child needs something different. We can give additional support to the child who is struggling without turning that need into a permanent rank. We can ask whether we are rewarding genuine responsibility or simply preferring the child who makes parenting easier. And we can recognize that fairness does not always mean splitting everything perfectly down the middle. If one child needs glasses, we don't buy glasses for every sibling. If one child is sick, equal time may be less fair than focused care. The goal is not identical treatment. The goal is preventing necessary differences from becoming a message that one child matters more. So when did it start? When did early humans start having a favorite child? There is no date hidden in the archaeological record. If favorite means private affection, we may never know. If it means unequal investment, the behavior is older than our species and rooted in the ancient conflict over limited parental care. What became distinctly human was the complexity around it. Long childhoods made children unusually costly. Teaching made their future value difficult to predict. Siblings competed and cooperated. Wider communities redistributed care. Culture changed which qualities people valued. And love existed inside decisions that may still have been painfully unequal. That leaves us with a question no fossil can answer for us. When we treat children differently today, are we responding fairly to what each child truly needs? Or are we repeating an ancient survival calculation in a world where it no longer has to decide who matters most?